Hi, I'm Deidre Malone, President and CEO of the Carter Malone Group, a Vice President of the NAACP Memphis branch, and immediate past President of the NAACP Memphis branch. I'm here with Mayor Jim Strickland this morning. He has a major announcement. Mayor Strickland.
Thank you, Deidre. Today, I'm announcing my appointment of the next leader of the Memphis Police Department and the next Chief of Police for the city of Memphis. Saralyn C.J. Davis is currently Chief of Police in Durham, and she's the right person to lead this department here in Memphis. She has an outstanding career in law enforcement as an officer and as a leader. She has a strategic vision for reducing violent crime. And she has a record of building relationships with the communities she serves. So I'm excited about this appointment. Welcome, CJ, to Memphis. I look forward to your meeting with the city council members and the community at large and your confirmation in May.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Welcome, Chief Davis. Welcome to Memphis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mayor Strickland, what was it about Chief Davis that made you want to select her as the next police chief for Memphis?
Well, first I want to say we had an outstanding group of 8 individuals who applied for this. But I think Chief Davis stood out for several reasons. Number one of which is just leadership. At the Atlanta Police Department and Durham, in national organizations, she's a leader who keeps up with best practices on what's going on and can lead a department to try to drive down violent crime, as I said, and also work with neighborhoods, building relationships, community policing, and building consensus in the community to try to get them all on the same page to try to reduce crime and make it safe and improve the quality of life. And what I've tried to do at City Hall is to hire really good leaders. And I think Chief Davis is fantastic.
So Mayor, Chief Davis was one of the last people to enter the race as a candidate for police chief for the city of Memphis. And you had some local candidates as well. What do you say to Memphians in terms of specifically what she had that those other candidates didn't have that made you want to select Chief Davis?
Well, first of all, those local candidates were outstanding, and we value them very much and want their leadership in the Memphis Police Department. And we're working on those relationships to try to build them even stronger. But what I didn't say I was going to hire somebody internal or external. Okay. I was just going to look for the best possible person, man or woman, outside of Memphis or inside of Memphis. And it was all leadership. All the candidates talk about, reducing crime and their record. They were all great police officers, but Chief Davis, I think, has a unique quality that she was near the very top of the Atlanta Police Department, very close to similar city to Memphis, and then ran a department in Durham, and was really, frankly, the only candidate who had run a department during the pandemic, was chief of police during the pandemic. So you put all those things together, and you'll see in a second when you hear her talk. You want to work for her. You want to follow her leadership, and it's that kind of dynamic leadership that I wanted to tap into.
And so, Mayor, what are your expectations for the chief?
Kind of what I laid out at the beginning, that she be a leader in the effort to reduce crime, particularly violent crime. It is not just a police matter. So it's not just, she's not solely responsible for that, but I think she has to be a leader in that effort. And part of that is building relationships with the community, and for a lot of different reasons, because you want the community to feel free to share information with police departments to help you solve crimes. And you also want to build faith in the community. I think the vast majority of Memphis has faith in the Memphis Police Department. But there are certain segments that don't, and I think we got to reach out to them and do a better job, and I think Chief Davis is perfectly suited for that.
Chief,
Yes.
I want to go ahead and just get right to it. I want Memphians to get a good feel for who you are. What do you want Memphians to know about?
Well, first of all, I would love for them to know that I have a great appreciation for the city of Memphis. I have done my homework, not just because of this selection process, but just following the history of the civil rights movement, which is near and dear to my heart, you know, being raised in the city of Atlanta and serving a department that I work very closely with civil rights icons. So I know the history of Memphis. I feel that my work has aligned with the work that the Memphis Police Department, the men and women there have been so close to as well. So I want the citizens of Memphis to know that I understand the plight that we all face with gun violence and various types of violent crimes, not just here in the city of Memphis, but last year was just a devastating year for police agencies around the country. And I understand that, and I understand how it affects the most vulnerable neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that are mostly distressed, those neighborhoods that have come to know gun violence as the norm. It shouldn't be that way. And we owe it to our communities, whether it's here in Memphis, whether it's in the city of Atlanta or Durham, where I currently am, that they should live in a way that's a quality of life that others enjoy. So my heart has always been in the community. I am also an individual that is very active in the community, not just in the uniform, but out of the uniform. I care a lot about young people and the future of our young people. So it's an honor for me to even be considered for a city like Memphis. This is a major city, and this is, you know, a career achievement for me as well. You know, I come from, you know, working a career in a large agency similar to the city of Memphis, chief of police in a mid-sized agency, and now I have an opportunity to lead a large agency, which I feel like I'm qualified to do.
Well, what is it that attracted you to just the field of law enforcement?
Well, you know, I grew up in a military family. My father is a career military man. It was 6 of us. He traveled around the world with us. And I grew up in a life of structure, a life of service, a life that my parents taught us to care about, you know, other people. And the first opportunity that I had to go into law enforcement, my parents talked me out of it. They said, no, we don't want you to do that. And I got to a point in my early 20s that it was just, you can't talk me out of this. This is something that I'm very passionate about and have always been interested in the criminal justice field. And that's what my bachelor's degree is, in criminal justice as well. And much to my parents' surprise, they were very supportive themselves and enjoyed watching my career progress.
When you look at the past police directors here in Memphis, they've all been male. Yeah. You will be our first female police, not director, but chief.
Yes.
What are your thoughts around that distinction?
Well, you know, we have to make that distinction because it's an accomplishment for any female to lead an agency like Memphis. But I would like for people to look at me as just as qualified as those males that have served the department and brought their talents and their skill sets. I can do the exact same thing. And, you know, with a different perspective too. So it's, like I said, it's an honor to be the first. It's an honor to be the first African-American female. So, you know, women are moving into spaces that we haven't had an opportunity to move in before, and we're demonstrating that we're qualified.
You are so qualified. I mean, I've had a chance to kind of read your CV and just very, very impressed with your growth, and you're moving up the ranks when it comes to law enforcement. And you had a challenge though in Atlanta.
I did.
I want to ask you about that. I know you were fired from the force. Can you kind of walk us through that so people can understand what happened?
Absolutely. And you know, that was a very devastating time for me, especially someone who was upwardly mobile in a department, always crossed all of my T's and dotted all of my I's, and I took pride in that. That's the person that I was. And to have an accusation by a couple of investigators who had basically botched an investigation and really needed somebody to blame it on. These two investigators indicated that I knew about the fact that they had evidence, and they had had it for years prior to my appointment in their particular work environment. And I had an opportunity to either take the blame as a supervisor or fight. And taking the blame would have been easy. That would have been the easy route for me. But I knew I needed to fight what was wrong. I needed to fight for my reputation. And that's what I did. And I knew that the truth would not come out unless I fought. And it was, I don't even think it was ironic that the two accusers resigned the day before my hearing. And I think that was telling for everybody at the time. But to make a long story short, I was exonerated. And after being exonerated, went back to work, the work that I love, and was celebrated for fighting, you know, because sometimes people need to see individuals stand up for what's right. And then I was not just promoted, I was skipped over rank and then promoted to major, where I should have been in the first place. And then I went on to be promoted to deputy chief in the city of Atlanta, and ended a great career in 2016. So I have no regrets, and I wasn't bitter. You know, with the saying, bitterness is the poison that you take and hope someone else dies from it. And I felt like life needed to move on.
With everything that's going on across the country when it comes to law enforcement, just thinking about the trial of the officer Chavin and the George Floyd trial that's going on, and then having the young 20-year-old killed by a police officer in Minnesota, all this going on in the same week. What are your thoughts around what you can bring to our city, specifically working with law enforcement to try and, you can't ensure it, but put something in place to make sure those types of incidents don't happen in our city?
Absolutely. You know, this is a very painful time in our country. This is a very difficult place for the law enforcement industry, because time and time again, we have failed, and we have. And I have said over and over again, I sit on panels around the country about police reform. And as an African-American woman who gets up in the morning without the uniform on, I understand that there is work to be done. There's much work to be done to build those relationships. So there's a lot that we can do here in Memphis. There is a lot that we can do on the national stage, because what happens in the city of Durham or the city of Atlanta or the city of Memphis impacts the nation. And the nation needs to see that we need our police officers. We have officers that get up every day to really protect and serve. They don't get up in the morning thinking that they're going out to hurt somebody or kill somebody. And we need to be able to build that trust with our communities by showing them that we're not just going to respond to, you know, a call because something bad has happened. We're going to establish the relationship before we have some type of crisis.
You're moving into, like Atlanta was, an activist community. And so what do you bring to Memphis from that perspective? I know that you believe in community policing. How are you going to work with the community to get them to have a level of trust in our police department?
Well, I believe you have to meet people where they are. I really do. I think that, you know, not just the chief, but every individual in a police department is an ambassador for the city. And we have to build relationships as a force multiplier. Every officer, from the officer on the beat to the command staff to the chief, we have to buy into the same philosophy that, as Robert Peel said, the police are the community and the community are the police. And we have to work together. and stop rolling out various types of programs and all of the things that we think communities need. We need to ask our community, what do you want from your public safety entity? What do you want from your police department? And find time to be, in those difficult conversations sometimes, even with activists. They deserve space to exercise their First Amendment rights. And in Durham, that's what we've allowed them to do. Even as I'm here right now, I had protests in Durham last night. But my staff has learned that it's not all about wearing mobile field force gear and getting in front of people who are already angry, who have reasons to be angry, that we need to give individuals their space to protest as long as it's done peacefully. And then if it's time for us to protect, the community from property damage or vandalism or whatever, we're there to do that as well. But for the most part, give people an opportunity to protest peacefully.
How do you define community policing?
Well, I kind of touched on it before. It has to be baked into the police department. It can't be a check the box, everybody took community policing, courses or cultural diversity courses or implicit bias courses. It has to be the way we operate every day, the way we give respect to community members, because we're there for them. It's not the other way around. We're there for them. So it's important for us to be able to demonstrate to those individuals who do in fact pay our salaries that we're there to keep them safe and establish those relationships that are so needed, not just in neighborhoods, but also with civic organizations and businesses. Everybody needs to play a part in community policing.
Chief Davis, I know you've done your homework on Memphis, specifically the Memphis Police Department. What do you view as some of the challenges we currently have? And it just, I know you haven't had a chance to really kind of dig into it, but some of the potential solutions, just based on your experience.
Yeah. Well, I believe in maximizing manpower. Sometimes you can't get the additional officers that you really need. And sometimes you really need to take a surgical look at what you have. And are we using the individuals that we have to the best of our ability? And it doesn't mean that that's not happening here, but what I would like to do is really take a really close look at, staffing levels and our officers being overworked. Sometimes, especially in this environment, we have a pandemic going on, we have all kinds of issues around the country, and of course, every city has an increase in crime. And that's a lot on an officer every day. So officer health and wellness is important. Are we getting the best out of each individual? Are they coming to work stressed? Are they coming to work without the type of training that they need? So it's important for us to really just take a surgical look and just do an evaluation, an assessment, if you will. I use a SARA model sometimes to just, scan it, do an analysis, and then just, respond just based on that information. I know that there's great work that has been done in this police department, and I sincerely hope that, my skill set and my experience can only build upon that.
Chief, you mentioned something around mental health, and in a Washington Post article, Chuck Wexler, executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum, an independent research organization devoted to improving policing, stated, "We have to get American police to rethink how they handle encounters with the mentally ill." What do you think about this statement, and how would you lead MPD to address mentally ill citizens differently in our community?
Absolutely, and historically, officers have been called to respond to situations that initially the call was not related to mental illness. Mm-hmm. But once they get there, they realize that, okay, this person obviously is having challenges. Years ago, there were resources that, an officer could pass an individual on to someone who can get them the help that they need. Today, not so much. Officers are responsible for mitigating all kinds of situations. And crisis intervention training is really, really important. Not just to have a crisis intervention team, but to have officers throughout the department that are trained in crisis intervention. Because it doesn't matter if it's a mental illness call, it could be a domestic violence call, and you get there and a child, a teenager, or even a spouse may be suffering from a mental illness kind of situation. So when you train all of your officers in crisis intervention, it's better outcomes for everyone, because then the officer has an opportunity to step back and take a look at whether or not, is this a situation that we need to arrest someone, or is this a situation where we need to get some different kind of help?
I'm looking at the current crime statistics for Memphis, particularly for homicide and aggravated assaults. What, you know, when you look at it, it's like we're up here in Memphis for aggravated assaults, like 22%. When you look at homicide, at this point, we're up about 47%. What are some of the violent crime strategies you think we need to implement here in our city?
Yeah, well, violent crime is a heavy lift for every chief right now.
Okay.
Last year, COVID brought about a different type of environment for everyone. And even prior to COVID, there were increases in aggravated assaults because guns are everywhere now. This is an environment where there's an affinity for guns. So my approach to violent crime is that you look at your aggravated assaults just as seriously as you do your homicides. Because your aggravated assaults, meaning someone fired a weapon at somebody, means somebody got lucky that they're not a homicide victim. So the individuals that are shooting guns and aggravated assaults, those individuals need to be addressed just as seriously as that suspect who committed a homicide. So it's sort of a holistic approach, and not really just in the police department, but everybody that's a part of that process needs to be on the same page about what makes a good case. How do we have our federal partners to assist us? How do we have our task forces to assist us? How do we have other entities in city government to help? You got to have some prevention, parks and recreation, you know, other civic organization, our clergy. Our churches have amazing reach in our communities. Everybody needs to be engaged on the preventive side, and then there are going to be times where we're not going to be able to help individuals who have demonstrated that they will be dangerous and they will hurt someone. Those individuals will have to be prosecuted through our prosecutorial system with our DA, and we need to work with them so that those prosecutions can happen, because repeat offenders spend, you know, it's at least 20% of people in the community that commit 80% of the crime. Most communities have good law-abiding people. And then there's this group of individuals who continue to repeat and commit violent crimes over and over again. And those are the individuals that we would be focused on.
You're looking at coming into a state where the legislature just approved that anybody can have a gun without a permit.
Open carry without a permit.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. What are your thoughts around that?
That's challenging. That's very challenging, and I think it's very inconsiderate. I hate to say it like that, but I think it's very inconsiderate to communities that are already struggling with gun violence. And when you put officers in a situation where they can't address suspicious individuals because they're walking around with weapons, you know, that makes it very complicated. So that means we have to really sit back and look at what the new approach is going to be, because this is just another workaround. And that's what law enforcement is. When laws change, we have to figure out a way to work around this new complex kind of situation and still get the job done.
You know, Mayor, when I think about, I know you've been recruiting for a long time, trying to get the complement up of police officers. How are we doing?
We were doing great before the pandemic.
Okay.
We had dropped down to almost 1,900 officers in like 2017, and we built it up in 2019 to 2,100 officers. So that was a good net increase. What's happened during the pandemic is we've had to limit the size of our classes and limit the number of classes because you have to socially distance and all that. So our Chief of Human Resources, Alex Smith, and MPD are working on this August getting a class back up to a size where we want it to be. So, but the last 12 months have been tough, so we've probably had a net decrease. I know we've had a net decrease in the last year, but we got to roll up our sleeves and start building it back up.
So Chief Davis, you know, once you are confirmed as the next chief of police for the city of Memphis, you have an opportunity to groom the next level of law enforcement officers in this community. What would be a couple of your first steps in doing that?
Well, I think leadership training is really important at the very beginning of an officer's career. And the reason I say that is because in Atlanta, I helped to roll out the Atlanta Police Leadership Institute. And that program was really about making sure that officers began their careers with leadership skills. And before you could even go to the next level to be an investigator or a supervisor, you had to sort of graduate through various types of very important fundamentals in order to move to that next rank, and so on through your career. But at the end of it, you really saw that leader that had all of the skill sets that are so important in this work. And instead of giving folks the rank and then expecting them to do the job without giving them all of the necessary tools that they need. So I really see looking at the organization as a whole to brand the organization in a way that the officers are proud of the fact that they have the skills that they need to do the job. The community is proud. They'll be able to see that as well. But mentoring is really important too. Formalized mentoring kinds of programs and things, and making sure that, I mean, this isn't easy work, and officers are sent out on the street quite frequently. After they graduate from the academy, they do their oath, and even though they have some level of training, they need mentoring throughout their careers as well.
Chief, what would you do to try and get young people, our youth, to see that they shouldn't be afraid of the police?
You know, I think that's part of that community policing, being part of the culture of the department, taking opportunities to just have conversations with young people, even if it's not a situation where the police were called. Just to take that time makes a difference in building that relationship. And if you think about 1,900 to 2,000 officers embracing that concept, what that would do, you know, for this industry. It may not have a rippling effect around the country, but it certainly would here in the city of Memphis. So I say that, you know, for young people, we need you to be police officers. We need you to help change the game. We need you to come and serve your community because you come from, you know, this community. And we want, you know, more young people to understand, you know, the rigors of the job, but at the same time, that it's a very rewarding career.
Chief, my final question for you. Mm-hmm. What do you want to say to Memphis as the City Council contemplates your confirmation on why you want to be the next chief of police here in Memphis?
Well, as I said before, for me, it's an honor. It really is. It's an honor to be able to lead a city, as I said before, that has such rich history, that reminds me of my career and my roots and my passion. And it doesn't matter what city you're in, if you love people, if you love service, then you can be a part of that family. I look forward to being a Memphian. I really do. And I look forward to meeting our council members so that they can, you know, see who I am as a person as opposed to just, you know, a professional. I know I bring a lot to the table. I continuously work on me. I'm a career learner. And I also want to stay connected on the national stage because I really believe that our industry needs voices like mine you know, to talk about what the future of policing should look like.
Good luck, Chief.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to you being our next Chief of Police here in Memphis.
Thank you so much.